You know what the difference between an artist and a craftsman is? A craftsman always does what the audience wants, and an artist always does what he or she wants.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. After a long break of Pepper Spotlight episodes, we are finally resuming the show and we're going to resume it with a bang for all our creators who listen to us from across the globe, who are looking out for some tips related to writing, design, or in general about creator economy. If you all have forgotten or if you're new for the show, my name is Pawan Rochwani. I lead the community and partnerships at Pepper Content. I also host this show where I interact with multiple creators, entrepreneurs, and people who are experts in the content domain to understand what the trends are. And it's been almost a year. Last year, December is when we started this show, and I think it's been almost a year. I also want to take this opportunity to thank each one of you who has been listening or watching this on YouTube. If you have watched all the episode, please go ahead, just put a comment and I'll reach out to you personally and give you some cool stuff from our end. But without taking much of your time, let's dive into this episode where we're speaking to Sanjay Shenoy. You might, if you are into the writing space, you might have probably heard of him, seen his content or read his blogs. If you haven't, I'm also attaching a brilliant about us section on his website, which we also talk about in the episode. It's in the description of this episode. Go ahead and read that. It's really worth reading. Go give it a read. And this conversation with Sanjay was pre-recorded over a Zoom call. Let's dive into it directly. Thank you so much, Sanjay, for giving us your time today and agreeing to do this conversation. I for sure know that everyone who's going to listen to this or watch this on YouTube, they're going to learn something really awesome from you in this conversation. So thank you so much for agreeing to be on Pepper Spotlight.
Thanks, Pawan. It's like an absolute pleasure to be here. And of course, like I mentioned before, I think Pepper Content is like doing amazing stuff. And in whatever way I can help the industry in which Pepper Content is operating in and everybody who's involved in this. And, I'll do my best. So yeah, let's have some fun.
Super. I think I have spoken to you quite a few times before, but the first time I got to know your journey was when I was preparing for this conversation, and I went through your entire about a section on the website, and damn, uh, two things on that. You are a very engaging writer. First of all, like I was hooked from like the very beginning till the end of it, and it's still there with me. Like I know exactly you got so many clicks, visitors, that company servers crashed, and all of those things. I remember that. So you're an awesome, brilliant writer that I have to compliment and appreciate about you. Second, I think you have had a roller coaster journey, and I feel a lot of people, and especially youngsters or aspiring freelancers, writers who are listening to this, watching this, a lot of times they feel that if they are on an unconventional path, they're doing something wrong. It's risky because nobody else kind of is, doing in that manner. But seeing you, I think you are not at all fearful about taking the unexplored paths and everything. Tell us. I really want to know from you your journey. I've read it, but I want to know, and everyone who's watching this or maybe listening to you for the first time, I just for their sake, what your journey has been till now is what we want to know first.
Yeah, I think I'll touch upon a little bit on the unconventional path side of things, because I think I tweeted about this a while ago that I think in my life I've gotten the highest ROI by taking the unconventional path. Right? When everybody says go this way, I go that way. Like if for nothing else, just to be rebellious and see, okay, why not this way? Right? And I've always felt that it's not just important to know what to do, but also very important to know what not to do, right? And when you know what not to do, you automatically arrive at what to do. And that is a very important place for you to be in, or rather mental state to be in, to like actually choose a path that you believe that you can take forward, right? Having said that, the way retrospectively looking, I was not thinking about all of these things at all, right? So when I started off, I think I was like, 17 or something like that. And like everybody else, when they're like 17, they want to like just earn some extra pocket money. And I was like, okay, how do we do this, right? And I go to the internet and I'm looking for all of these things like, hey, need to make some more money and all of those things. Um, I eventually end up on this freelancing platform, which was called Get a Freelancer, which is something like Upwork. Like back in the day,
Yeah.
that was the place for freelancers to like go to. And I see all of these projects that were posted saying that, hey, you know what, looking for SEO guys, blah, 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 things like that. And they were like paying top dollar, man. Like I was like, wow, what on earth is SEO? Like, and why are people paying so much? Obviously, being the naive young kid that I was, I went ahead and started bidding on these projects. And guess what happened? Absolutely nothing happened because obviously I was like, I had no idea about what I was doing. So what I did was I posted a project saying that, hey, you know what? I am looking for SEO guys. So send in your proposals. So I got in all of these proposals and I took the best parts of each of these proposals, went ahead and bid on this one project where they're looking for SEO. And surprisingly, I won, and that's how I first made my first $400 on the internet. And the best part was I had no idea what I was doing. Right, I had no idea about what SEO was. I had never done it before, but I'd won this project, so I have to deliver. So I worked really, really hard to understand what SEO is, and it was like pretty different back in the day. This was like 12 years ago. Uh, it was very different back in the day, and I managed to deliver the projects very successfully. And I'm still friends with my first ever client, so which is like awesome. So that's how I actually got started with my entire journey. And eventually I became a freelancer. Then I moved to Singapore, stayed there for a year. I ran an agency. I ran it both in Bangalore and in Singapore. And yeah, agency life was very difficult. And I truly believe that I learned a lot more running that agency than I did in my MBA. Right. So I went to Singapore to do my MBA, by the way. But very important lessons in terms of entrepreneurship, in terms of running a business and all of this. And most important lesson that I learned is I don't know what I don't know in a lot of aspects, right? So which is why I started looking out for startups to work with. And again, back in the day, working with a startup was not exactly the sexy thing to do, right? The people are like, what's wrong with you, man? Why are you working with this? Who are these people, right? It was like that. So the first startup that I worked for was this startup called as Thrilophilia. They are an outdoor and adventure travel company. They have like gone into much more wider aspects right now. And that's probably where I saw the true power of content and SEO at scale. Right. Up until that point, I had experienced the power of content and SEO, but not to that scale. Because when I joined in, I think these guys were getting about 500 to 600,000 visitors a month, purely from content and SEO, right? And by the time I left, we were getting about 1.1, 1.2 million visitors a month. But I learned a lot, had a lot of fun, made amazing friends over there. But I also wanted to be sure that, hey, whether whatever I have experienced and learned can be replicable, right? Otherwise, like you said, it would have been just luck, right? Like it would have been, I might have been in the right place at the right time and everything fell in place. So I joined another startup called as Explara, who was into event registration and ticketing, did something similar over there, took it from 0 to 100,000 visitors in less than 6 months. And that's where the whole server crashing episode also happened. Like, one of the blog posts went super viral and it almost crashed our servers. We got picked up by like major publications all over the world. Amazing things happen. That's when I knew that, hey, you know what, now I have a framework that I can actually go out there and replicate it across different brands, different companies, different industries, and all of those things. Eventually, I started up Pixel Track and I got into training and never looked back ever since. It's amazing to like train people and to let people know the true power of both content and SEO. Even in my SEO, my main focus is it's very content driven rather than tech driven, so to speak, right? So that's what I focus on, and it's been an amazing journey. So yeah,
I've read this, and now when you also say this, it's still very fresh and amazing to hear about it. Tell me, and I have two questions, and actually I have multiple questions while you were saying. But the first thing I want to know is 12 years back, when I think we did not have so many tools, right? Like, uh, I think now we have plenty, and it's much easier to sort of like navigate your way with SEO and everything. But 12 years back, how was it? How was what was the difference between what it is today and what it was back then 12 years ago?
A lot of difference, to be very honest. One thing is for certain that it was much easier back then, right? And compared to what it is right now, it's much more difficult to like crack SEO right now, regardless of the industry that you're. I wouldn't say difficult. It's relatively difficult than what it was like 12 years ago, and for obvious reasons. The competition is like much more higher these days. But also, I think there was oh, there was no information at all as to like, okay, what is SEO? How do you go about doing it? What is step one? What is step two? What is step three? You had to actually go out there and do it yourself and learn it by doing and like actually understanding how all of these things work. But of course, there were like enough resources out there. But and of course, there are not as many tools as sophisticated as it is today back in the day. But again, having said that, it was a lot of fun back in the day also, and very happy to see that the way it has progressed and what it has become today. Because back then, especially when I started off, when you say the word SEO, people never used to like even like understand what it is, right? Like back in the day, I had to like convince two things to people: that first of all, hey, your business needs to get on the internet because like people are on the internet.
Yeah.
And then I need to convince them that, hey, you know what, you need to get into SEO. But now that's not the case. Like people know what SEO is. People know that, you can use content, you can use SEO, you can use all the other channels also to build that relationship with people using your content and deliver value and like, attract attention and also convert that attention into a transaction. And, so that's the major difference right now. I think there has been a shift in people's mind. They want it. It's more of a pull rather than push.
And I think a lot of writers, because I interact with a lot of writers on a daily basis, and they ask me this question that they SEO is not something that they really enjoy. I mean, they will write the best of the creative articles about lifestyle, travel, whatever, any genre, but SEO is something that they feel is not their cup of tea. How much do you think SEO is, let's say, creative, and how much of it is technical? Is it something that you can use tools and understand, or is it pure, like, let's say, a creative gameplay? How do you define it or quantify it?
Oh, the way I look at SEO, in fact, I hate the term SEO, to be very honest, because I think it kind of like paints this picture that it's like, you're trying to optimize for the algorithms. And I keep telling people in my courses also that, hey, what you're actually doing is UXO, user experience optimization. There is a journey, a certain journey a user is going, and you're optimizing that journey for that particular person, right? That's exactly what you're doing. And the basis of, SEO is, I think I keep using this particular quote from Peter Drucker, where he explains what marketing is. And I feel that's the best definition of marketing, that the aim of marketing is to know the customer so well that the product or service fits him or her and sells itself, right? So that's exactly what you're trying to do with SEO also. You're trying to understand an inherent existing demand out there and trying to like match it with what you can provide. So that's all you're doing, to be very honest. Like on a very fundamental level, that's exactly what you're doing. So to be very honest, I wouldn't bucket it very strictly neither under creative or under tech, right? It's like a mixture of a lot of different things. Yes, there is creativity involved. There is also some tech involved, but at the end of the day, it's all about empathizing with your users, trying to understand what are they trying to do, what are they looking for, and how can you actually provide it to them in the most efficient manner. That's what SEO is.
Got it. What's the most frequent, or let's say the most common question that you get from all the students in the multiple courses, workshops that you have done in the past years? Like, what's that one question that's like that everyone has, or every batch or every workshop webinar will ask you that question?
Whether they can do SEO or not, right? Like that is the biggest thing that is stopping people from, like, even the writers that you mentioned, because they have this certain understanding, or rather misunderstanding and belief about SEO, that you have to have a certain technical know-how and all of those kind of things for you to do SEO. In fact, in my courses, I've had people who didn't even know how to take a screenshot. I am not joking. They didn't even know how to take a screenshot, but they walked out of it as like extremely confident SEO professionals. So what I tell people is that if you know how to use a browser on a desktop, you will learn how to do SEO. So you don't have to worry about it. But if you're already intimidated or already made up your mind that, hey, you know what, this is not for me, you'll never be able to do it, right? But if you like overcome that, and that's one of the few things that I address in the beginning of my sessions, in the beginning of my courses, that, hey, you know what? Forget about the fact that whether you can do it or not. Just like listen, absorb, implement, and you'll be surprised to know how many people who come into the program and they always start off by saying that, hey, you know what? I'm intimidated, I'm overwhelmed, I don't think I can do it. But by the end of it, they'll be like, wow, I never thought I will be able to do it. So, the proof lies in the pudding. People can do it. It's just that you need to get your hands dirty. That's about it.
Got it. Something I wanted to ask you, and this came to my head when I was reading the About Us section on your website also. How did you sort of made up your mind after, being an entrepreneur, then working full time for somebody else's, let's say, vision or passion and their company, and then again shifting your, let's say, mindset to being entrepreneurial now?
Yeah,
How, and also obviously you started, let's say, as a freelancer or let's
yeah,
say
yeah,
individual professional, and
yeah.
then all of these shifts. How does that work for you? Because I've had similar shift very recently, like just a year back. For initial few months, it was a little difficult for me to catch up on it. But I
Yeah.
don't imagine myself, like, now that I've got myself into a mold of, let's say, one particular behavior and routine, going back to again and doing something else. So how did you manage to do that? Were there some challenges for you, or how was it?
Yeah, of course, I'm not going to lie. There were like challenges for sure, especially the first shift from being an entrepreneur to being an employee, right? Usually it happens the other way around for like most people, right? They're an employee and then they come into entrepreneurship. But I didn't even, my first job was Thilofilia, right? After like being 5 years into the whole digital marketing space, that was my first job ever, right? But I think I had to what I realized was that the first thing that I realized was, you know what, saying I don't know is half the knowledge, right? Just like leave your ego outside the door. And like there are plenty of things for you to learn in terms of running a business, in terms of running a team, in terms of running successful marketing campaigns in different scenarios, right? And would you want to do it at your expense or at somebody else's expense? The answer was very obvious when you like look at it from that perspective, right? Obviously you would want to like experiment and like learn and understand at someone else's expense. So once I did that, once I was confident that, hey, you know what, I'm not going to say that I might be a better entrepreneur now. I'm not going to say that I'm going to be a better marketer now, but I am confident enough to take the plunge back in because I observe, or rather I can like identify the massive opportunity out there. There's a huge vacuum in the market out there in terms of like, people want to be trained in a certain way, people want to learn all of these things, and there is not many people who are doing it. If they're doing it also, they're not doing it right. So there is an opportunity out there, and if nothing else, for me to like actually satisfy that opportunity or demand makes me very happy. And like, when you see the transformations out there, like in terms of, like I said, people coming in, knowing nothing about SEO and like walking out. So there's this one guy called Rohan, who was a cricketer, right? And like, who had zero idea about SEO, right? And apparently he was almost drafted into the IPL and all of those things. He started this cricketing academy in Bombay and Thane, I believe, if I'm not wrong. So one of the guys who goes to the cricketing academy, he was like, hey, you know what, you should join this course. Like, it might help you actually do it. And this guy just like took a blind leap of faith. And like, by the end of it, he was like making crazy business with just SEO, right? The fact that a cricketer who has not even heard the term SEO for almost his entire life, 10 weeks later, he can do that. That's amazing. That's what I live for, I guess.
Uh, and I think also understanding, the potential here of the internet
Yes.
and of the content business, that
Yeah.
irrespective of which field you are in,
Yeah.
right, or which industry category you are in. And I mean, like, this guy has, let's say, a cricketing academy here in Thane, which I think is a very offline business, right? I mean,
Yes.
like, you have to be there, like it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
gym, you have to be there and
Yeah.
all that. So that kind of business also, scaling because of content, because of SEO, that itself, talks about the massive potential of the
Absolutely.
internet, of the content. And
Yeah.
like, everyone who's listening to this, watching this, if you're running a small business or you are an entrepreneur, Please.
So, which is why I keep telling people, right? Content is the easiest way to clone yourself, right? What are you doing? You're just cloning yourself. You're like creating this idea, this concept, and thanks to the amazing distribution power of the internet, you're able to distribute this idea for free and like actually attract so many people to you, right?
Yeah.
So what better way to like actually do it than like with content, which is why like I keep telling people, hey, you want to clone yourself, go out there and create some content. It's so
Yeah.
much more easier, right? And unlimited scale, right? You can like go out there and like scale it without any incremental cost.
Yeah, yeah. I think you just need to have a phone or laptop and internet. That's it.
Yeah,
Uh, Rest everything else is like literally free, or at least comes with a free trial.
yeah.
So all of that is like great. And everyone who's watching, listening to this, please go ahead. If you haven't started building your audience and your content journey, please go ahead and do that like right now itself. Um, Sanjay, tell me what is something that you feel people don't understand about writing, or they have myths about writing, because I'll, I mean, I sometimes don't understand whom I can label as a writer or whom I cannot label as a writer. Because let's take example of people from US or UK, Australia, wherever, where their first language itself is English.
Yeah.
For them, because they're practicing it since like they are born, it's very easy for them. Written communication, verbal communication in English, it's really very easy. um how do you, for let's say, for people in India, how can you label somebody they are a writer? Or let's say if I want to tell everyone on the internet that I am a writer, what really defines if I can put that label or not? Or how do you go about it?
I think the first myth or rather misunderstanding that we need to address and acknowledge is that, especially when it comes to writing on the internet or creating content on the internet, it's definitely not about language or your linguistic skills, right? That's the first thing that we need to understand. Because thanks to all the useless essays that we have written in our schools and colleges and all of those things, we have been made to believe that, content is about language skills. Back in the day, it probably was, and that's how we were being like gauged and like try to like, those were the parameters based on which we were like actually seeing that, hey, good writer, bad writer. But today, that's not necessarily the case. And that's the first fundamental thing that people need to take a shift, right? And which is why I tell people that writing is thinking, right? What are you doing when you're writing? You're taking a very vague, shapeless thought which is in your head and making it tangible and accessible to the entire world, right? So what then the challenge now is how well can you articulate those thoughts? That is the challenge, right? Which is why clarity over vanity. Don't try to like, demonstrate your proficiency in English or any other language that you might be writing in. Your job is to communicate what is in here. How can you communicate, articulate it clearly to the other person sitting across the screen, right? That is the primary function or the objective of a good writer. Are you able to like, and you might have seen it, a good writer always uses extremely simple words. They don't go overboard. And that's the other thing, like people associate using really big fancy words and jargon to like writing well, right? Don't do that, right? In fact, that will actually not help you attract your audience. Try to like create your content as if you're talking to that person. And when you make it very conversational, it becomes so much more easier for people to like actually relate to it and understand it in a much better way, right? So that's the first shift that you need to bring in. The second shift, yes, I mean, I might be sounding very like, I might be contradicting my own point here. Yes, if you want to have a global audience, or say, for example, you might want to work for an international or a US client, and, somehow they're like saying that, what, we don't want people or their audience to know that this is not coming from a native speaker. So there are a few things that, I have actually spoken about, and this is purely based on my research. Okay. Like, and I have like, spoken about this many, many times in the past, and I've spoken about this to like English professors and all of those things. Nobody had an objection about this. So there are a few differences in terms of the language itself, which if we just identify it and acknowledge it, you'll be surprised that 80% of your, the non-native part of things will just disappear. In fact, people who are listening to this, watching this, just go to YouTube and check out how not to be a non-native writer, right? I've made a video on that. It's like a 30-minute video. In fact, you might be wondering that, hey, that's a double negative, how not to be a non-native writer. But I intentionally said that because the idea here is not to become a native speaker or a native writer, because we probably never will be, right? Because we are not born in the US or the UK. Our first languages is not English. Probably yours and mine definitely is probably the third language, right? And it's fine. It doesn't have to be that way also. But having said that, a simple thing would be your subject verb object arrangement, right? So in English, it needs to be subject verb object, which is I'm going home, right? In, say, for example, Hindi, excuse my absolutely terrible Hindi, my exposure to Hindi is very bad. So anyway, मैं घर जा रहा हूँ, घर में जा रहा हूँ मैं घर. You can arrange it in like subject verb object, object verb subject, object subject verb. You can arrange it in any manner and it still makes sense. Now, the reason why I'm saying this is because what happens usually, either when you're writing or when you're speaking also, people tend to translate it directly and write it in English. That's where the problem lies, right? You need to start actually thinking in English and writing in English for you to make sure that to some extent, you're not giving away the fact that you are a non-native speaker. You don't have to be a native speaker or a native writer rather. Just don't give it away that easily also. And these small things can actually help. The other thing that we tend to do a lot is what is called as nominalization, wherein we change the verb into a noun, right? Simple example would be, I did my graduation in 2011, right? So a better way to say it is, I graduated in 2011, right? What we did in the first sentence was we took a verb and unnecessarily converted into a noun, right? And the reason again why we do it is because the way we structure those sentences in our own languages, in our own local languages itself, right? And we automatically tend to like structure these sentences like this. And tenses also, like, you might have heard this a lot, people say, I didn't knew instead of I didn't know, right? So these kind of small things you can actually identify, acknowledge, and like, be a little aware of it while you're writing or while you're speaking also. And you'll be surprised to know that people will find it very difficult to even know whether you are a native speaker or not. So there is a whole video on this. You can just like YouTube it and like check it out. But yeah, I think those are some of the things that people need to keep in mind, especially if they're looking to attract a global audience.
On a, let's say, funny or nostalgic note, I used to make this mistake in school. Like, so, and I always used to do this. I didn't knew instead of doing I didn't know. And every exam I used to just like, my marks used to reduce because of these silly mistakes. And I was practicing on that R.R. Martin. I think R.R. Martin is some book, famous book. Renan Martin. Oh, yeah. I was thinking about Game of Thrones, George R.R. Martin. So that grammar book was something that was always lying on my study table.
Yeah.
Crazy. Tell me about how did you decide to become a trainer, or how do you decide that you want to teach and tell people about how they can get better at writing about SEO, about blogging? How does that point come to you, like where you feel that okay, I feel like I can like teach people, I can train people?
Yeah, I think I was drawn to teaching on a very subconscious level from the beginning, although like it never happened for the longest time. But then along came Deepak Kanakaraju. A lot of people might know him as Digital Deepak, who happens to be one of the big bloggers in India. And he came along one day and it's like, hey man, let's catch up. And like, it's like, okay, cool. We caught up and it's like, let's do something together, man. Like, why not? Like, I was like, yeah, why not? Like, there is no reason why we shouldn't be doing it. And I was like, okay, let's test it out and see how people receive me, and like whether I'm able to like, again, the challenge with teaching or training rather is not about parroting the information that is out there. It's about distilling the information to the most fundamental level and actually structuring it in a way that is easy for people to consume so that they can go out there and implement. So that is the ultimate challenge, right? Where any edtech, even in my courses, my ultimate goal is not how many sales I've got. It's about what is the learning outcome. That is the ultimate metric. That is the North Star metric, right? What is the learning outcome, right? If I'm able to actually get them to implement and transform, I've done my job. And I think I've done a fairly good job in terms of getting people to like implement and all of those things. But yes, so once I did that, we did a test run, and I was like, wow, looks like this is something that I can actually do. And it wasn't easy because uh, teaching requires you to like empathize with your students or your audience to such a deep level, and you'll eventually realize that you need to go up a much deeper level and like make them get over their limiting beliefs and all of those kind of things for you to actually drive home the point and make them understand what the concept actually is. Now, it was quite challenging in the beginning, but I think I've gotten that sense of flow to it. And again, like I said, I truly enjoy it. And the fact that I found something that I truly enjoy, I was like, hey man, why not? I mean, how many people would say something like that? And I'm very lucky to be not just saying it, but also living it. So yeah.
If the entire Jor Parivar is going to like watch this episode, they're going to be putting down some comments on this. And Pratik has been on this show, and he was also part of.
No, not digital Pratik, digital Deepak. There are like.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I was thinking what.
Yeah, it's a very common misconception of
yeah. Never mind. I have two last questions for you, and both are like very important questions, and I don't want to miss out on that. One is, anytime I meet a writer or content creator, or let's say anybody creative or an artist, I really like to ask them as to what is their process of creation. Like, how do you go about ideating about something? How do you actually execute that ideation? And, how do you edit or, gauge your output, and that entire process basically. So let's say you have to write a blog about, let's say, crypto. How do you go about it?
Yeah. I think the first thing that I would do, and I would like to quote the legendary Javed Akhtar here, and I heard him say this on a podcast, and I was like, wow, that's amazing. That's exactly how I should approach this, or how I started training people also. And he said that, what the difference between an artist and a craftsman is? A craftsman always does what the audience wants, and an artist always does what he or she wants, right? So my approach is, first become a craftsman, and then you become an artist, right? Because what happens is, usually people have this unnecessary pressure on themselves to be original, to come up with something so that's nobody has ever seen, right? You know what? There is like plenty of people out there who are looking for certain information, and there is either they are underserved or not served at all, or there is information which is too overwhelming. Say, for example, in the case of SEO, right? So it's the same thing with crypto also, right? There is just too much information. Where do you start? Like, how does it work? What is this? What is blockchain? What is like proof of work, proof of what, this, that, everything? There's so many things being thrown at you. You don't know how to structure this entire thing in your head, right? And your job as a writer is to do that structuring for your audience, right? You know what? If you need to know this, what is the other prerequisite information you need to know? Okay, this is what you need to do. So you start at the end, and you're like, work your way backwards from there. But again, along the way, you need to understand, okay, what are the questions at each of this stage? And then you start from the beginning, right? That's how I start all of this thing. And I have a very simple 6-step content framework that I also teach people. And the first is the headline. Make sure your headline is absolutely spot on, because, your headline is the first point of interaction between your audience and your content, right? So regardless of how amazing your content is, if your headline doesn't do the job of actually selling your content, nobody's going to click on it. So you need to make sure you get your headline right. Then you need to make sure you retain the attention that you have managed to attract through your headline with your introduction, right? You retain that attention, because you probably have about 5 to 6 seconds, right? And you need to break people's pattern, right? They're like going through certain things, they're mindlessly scrolling through Instagram or say Google or whatever it is. You need to, break them out of that. So there are ways to do it. And once you do that, just focus on the what, why, and how, right? So what is crypto? Why should you be knowing about crypto? How do you go about doing anything in terms of crypto, right? Just these 3 overarching questions, and then you can go deeper into all of the subtopics that you might actually come across. But again, then comes the other challenging part of sculpting your work also. Because what happens usually is that you might end up going on a tangent, which is absolutely not necessary and kind of like makes your audience even more confused than they are, right? So then it comes the challenging work of removing things ruthlessly, which shouldn't be there, and like actually making sure that the central theme of that piece of content, actually the sanctity of the theme is always maintained throughout that piece of content. So once you start approaching it like this, creating content becomes so much more easier. And I've used this very simple yet very effective 6-step content framework across different formats like videos, webinars, blogs, emails, social media, whatever it is. And it's so simple yet so effective because it follows common sense, right? So that's what people would have. Like if I say, hey, cryptocurrency, they'll be like, what is cryptocurrency, right? You explain what is cryptocurrency. Then they're like, okay, why should I be even bothered about it? So you give them all the reasons why they should be bothered about it. Then they're like interested now. Oh, wow, that sounds pretty interesting. How do I go about it? Then you give them all the steps how to go about it. So this simple structure has helped me a lot. And again, like I said, start from understanding what your users want. Plenty of tools out there which will allow you to do that. Google is your best friend. Go out there, try to understand what people want around that particular topic, and then create. And eventually, feel free to become that artist that you always wanted to be, right? Then you'll understand that, hey, you know what? Now I have this comfort level with this audience that allows me to take certain risks and like, push the boundaries that I myself have set with the audience and see how I can like actually, make it slightly bigger and then bring about your artistic skills out there.
Got it. I told you that these are my last two questions, but I have a very pressing small sub question.
Sure.
And this is coming from so many people ask me this question. Okay. And there are multiple blogs also about this. For a writer, let's say somebody wants to start their journey, because right now there are so many platforms, right? Like there's social media also, there is Substack, ConvertKit, Medium, WordPress, Wix, or like you can just like code your own website also and all of that thing. What is like best according to like from a platform lens? Like if I would put, let's say, same efforts into writing in terms of creativity, SEO, which platform will give me the best result according to you?
Oh, see, when you're starting off, it's best that you're platform agnostic, right? Because at the end of the day, what matters is how good is your writing, right? The tool is not the craft. The platform is definitely not the craft. The craft is the writing itself, right? So you need to, that is the main focus that you need to, because every platform has its pros, every platform has its cons. But now coming from a perspective of audience building and audience ownership, right? So that's where things start changing, right? When it comes to like audience ownership, right? So having your own self-hosted blog, for example, I always recommend people to go on WordPress. The entire ecosystem is so amazing. It's super user-friendly. You can set it up like that and like get it going like yesterday, right? So it's super easy to do that. So best way to do it is like put it out there on your own self-hosted WordPress blog, primarily because, you get to own your audience, zero censorship. Nobody like can tell you what you can, what you cannot write, nothing of that sort, right? So you can go out there and do a bunch of different things. Apart from that, I think to supplement it rather, I would strongly recommend having an email list. And I am a huge believer in that. And, having that inbox is probably the most sacred, private, intimate space of a human being. And if you are able to enter that private, intimate, sacred space of a human being, you would create a bond like no other, right? So you'll be able to build a great relationship with your audience. And again, I wouldn't say you have complete control over it, because 90% of the people use Gmail. And tomorrow if Gmail decides to say that, you know what, I'm going to change something, and like, you're all like, screwed. So you wouldn't want to like rely too much on that also. But that's probably the best you've got compared to say a Facebook or an Instagram or a LinkedIn or anything for that matter, where you don't have, zero control about your own content ownership, and most importantly, the ownership of your audience. So if you have some control over all of these things, you are, you build a much deeper relationship with your audience. Again, because of which you'll be able to understand them, empathize with them, and create amazing content, and build that audience even more.
Right. And something that you said like lays the foundation for my next and the last question. A few years back, SMS marketing was really, really, let's say, important. Then, let's say, came in email marketing. But very recently, I think last year or 6 months back is when Apple created some policies that, not all newsletters will fall into the emails and things like that. And probably already there are some challenges with email even now, that some newsletters go to promotion or let's say spam as well and don't fall into primary even when we have voluntarily subscribed to it, right?
Correct.
So whatever, for technical reasons, and for those things, some people also say that you should do WhatsApp marketing, have a WhatsApp newsletter, and all of those things, but somewhere that also has challenges. And I think all of these evolutions and changes will keep on happening. And you, as a content entrepreneur now, I think you have seen a lot of these changes in the last, let's say, 12 and 12 plus years. Um, what are some things that you think people should watch out for, or start doing it from today, so that the next few years at least, because I know the entire industry is evolving so rapidly, we cannot like plan for next 5 years, 10 years or stuff like that. Maybe let's say next 2 years or 1 year, what are some things that creators and writers should do today, so that at least for the next 1 year, 2 year, they are like okay, good with maybe email newsletters or any stuff like that.
Simple answer is don't try to play catch up, right? You'll be extremely exhausted and you'll be always behind, right? You'll always be trying to catch up with the newest trend, the newest algorithm, the newest platform, whatever it is, right? And it can be very exhausting as a content creator, as a business owner, whatever it is. So the simple thing that you can do is just focus on the users, because let's try to understand something, be it say a Facebook, be it say a Gmail, be it say a Google, right? All of these guys are intermediaries between you and your audience, right? And in fact, these guys need you more than you need them, right?
Yeah.
As content creators, these, say for example, Google, right? They need you more than you need them. Without you as a content creator, Google would not exist, right? So if you focus too much on the algorithm, then what is going to happen is you're only going to optimize for the algorithm, but you're going to displease all of your users and eventually displease the algorithms itself. Because at the end of the day, what does Google want? Google wants more people to come back and use Google again and again and again. And the only way they can do it is when they are able to satisfy the need. Like they have this needs met rating and all of those kind of things, wherein they try to understand whether a piece of content or a website has actually solved the query a user has, right? So as long as, I think one of the metrics that Google uses is like, hey, people shouldn't even be going to the second page, because the second page of Google is where dead bodies are buried, right? Nobody even goes there ever, right? So just focus on the users, because the more you focus on the users, ironically, as counterintuitive as it might sound, your algorithms will start following you because they want you, rather than, because the users are coming to you. Now, the entire dynamic has shifted. So just keep focusing on the users, and not only will the users follow, the platforms will also start following you.
Got it. The listeners and viewers of this show probably know this, that they shouldn't trust me when I say this is my last question. But this is like an like like an
Final.
experience for you. Huh? This is like final question. You also do YouTube. You are very active on Twitter, across different platforms. You have webinars, workshops, courses, and everything. Um, and again, this is also one of the very common questions that I ask all creators or guests on the show, as to how do you manage your time and what does like your day look like? Because I think over the past few years, or let's say this year, I've realized uh, how we can get more done, or how can we do new things, new experiences, upskill ourselves, and all of this is really dependent on how we manage our time. So this is more like, let's say, for all the viewers and listeners, and for me also, as to learn how does our guest manage their time. So how do you manage your time?
Honestly, I do as less as possible, and that's the trick, right? we always try to like overwhelm ourselves with like, I've been in that position where I was like, you know what, I had to create 3 videos, 4 newsletters, 5 blog posts, 6 social media posts. Hey man, like just, relax. Is it actually working? Because what is going to happen as a content creator, like, you get caught up in this whole quantity game. And I know that, your quality, you'll only achieve it through quantity and all of those kind of things, right? But consider this fact, right? What I have seen it happen to me and a lot of other people is that they go in with like so much intensity in the beginning. But what usually happens is the return of that effort or for the effort and energy that they have put in is so minimal that people get very discouraged. They're like, man, I've been doing so much for so long and like the needle has barely moved. Am I even like, what is the point of doing something like this? Right? So instead of like trying to do too many things, do things sequentially, right? First, focus on one thing, do it properly, and try to understand what is that 80% of 20% of the thing that will give you 80% of the result, and just focus on that. And when it comes to like, if you're a business owner or trying to like, make business work for you in terms of content and all of those things, simple tip I'll give you, most platforms today are pay to play, right? So figure out your content will definitely help you attract the attention, but you know what? Learn how to convert that attention into a transaction. That is the trick, one trick that you'll thank yourself or rather regret not learning it sooner. I definitely did, right? Because with content, what you're trying to do is you're trying to add value, but with copy, what you're trying to do is you're persuading people to take action. Now, the moment you're able to do that, right, you're able to say that, hey, you know what, if I get 100 people, I can convert 10 people to transact with me. You don't need so many pieces of content to go out there and work for you. You just need enough pieces of content to work for you. And like, you keep going out there and like using that piece of content to attract attention, using copy to convert that attention into transaction, put it back, keep it going again and again. And that's the approach that I take, to be very honest. And it seems to be working really, really well. And I do it very slowly. And the other thing that I want to tell many content creators out there is that you really need to expand your time horizon, right? So everybody wants results yesterday. Unfortunately, that is the biggest problem people have, right? Ask yourself this question honestly. Can you do this for the next 10 years without any expectation? Now, that's the key thing, right? Without any expectation, can you do it for the next 10 years? If the answer is truly yes, then you know what? Take it slow. Being frequently, maintaining consistency can also mean that, right, one blog post a month. It's okay. But as long as you do it every month for the next 10 years, you will hit a point where, compounding takes into effect and like you will get exponential results. But if you try to say that, you know what, I'm going to write a blog post every single day for the next 30 days, you're going to burn yourself out very soon and end up hating the entire process itself, which you wouldn't want to like get yourself into. So all of these things, just keep in mind. Again, I might be saying things that a lot of people might not have heard, like, but I feel that this is what works for me. And I'm just giving an alternative perspective on how to approach content creation for most people.
No, and it's completely okay. This is your episode, so we are here to hear you. It's okay if not a lot of people say similar things, so that's completely not a problem. Yeah, that was the final question. Thank you so much.
Finally.
not asking you more question. Thank you so much. I think I also personally got a lot of new perspective, and everyone who's going to watch this or listen to this, they will also get a lot of new perspective. I am going to mention in the description of this episode your website, the videos that you were referring about, and multiple other things that we talked about in this conversation. Any last thoughts that you want to share before we end this? Anything that you want to mention?
Yeah, people don't seem to understand the amazing power the internet has to offer. And when we talk about internet, everybody thinks about it in terms of Facebook or Instagram Reels or Twitter threads and YouTube videos and podcasts. As a consumer, right? Most of them are consumers out there. The beauty of the internet is that everybody can be a producer also, right? And you don't have to be this crazy producer with like 1 million people following you or 10 million subs on your YouTube channel and all of those things at all. You need to find this very small pocket of demand, right, which you truly believe in, right? And just serve that pocket of audience. That's it, right? You don't, and that alone can, like, change your life significantly, and definitely the lives of your audience, right? So just focus on that very small pocket of demand, identify it, make sure you like it, go out there and keep working on that. And eventually you will, like, create this beautiful network of people who share similar ideologies, similar thoughts, similar values, similar ideas with you, and you've created this community on the internet through your content. So yeah, I think that would be my final words.
I hope you all enjoyed this conversation. If you liked any part of this conversation, just go ahead and tweet that by tagging us, put it up on IG story, or just reshare some of the reels that we upload about this episode. And we will give away some cool merch from Pepper Content to some of these folks. More details about it, just go ahead, tag us in your tweets or IG stories, and we'll DM you more details about this. You can also recommend whom do you want to listen on this show. If you have somebody whom we should invite on these episodes, please go ahead, just comment below and we'll be happy to bring them on the show. This episode was recorded and happened because somebody mentioned on our LinkedIn post Sanjay's name. And that's why I was already connected with Sanjay since before, and I just messaged him asking, would you be willing to be on our show? And he agreed for it. So that's how it happened. So thanks to that person who commented on our LinkedIn post. We are happy to bring in folks that you recommend. So go ahead, put it out in the comments, or just DM us directly on Instagram, Twitter, wherever you are. But stay safe, take care. We don't know what this new variant is, but happy to help you guys in any manner. If you need any support from me or from Pepper Content in general, just feel free to reach us anytime. We are there for all the creators across the globe.